What is something that is becoming normalized and it very much should not be? Blindly believing an authority figure or entity. As someone who isn't a fan of the major political parties in the USA, I am utterly amazed at how quick people are to believe anything that comes out of the mouth of a politician, or how easily they adopt all of the viewpoints of the party. This extends to the business world. For some reason, every Republican thinks the oil industry is run by a bunch of altar boys, while Democrats think that the pharmaceutical industry would never put profits above people. It's crazy that people actually get social credit for deeply aligning with a group. The normalization of treating other people like commodities. There are so many clips and posts about moving on, not accepting this and that. People aren't perfect. No one is going to fit some way too specific laundry list of perfections. Disagreements are a starting point for positive growth and change, but only when it's a starting point and not an excuse to ghost. We're never going to collectively come together in an essentially communal way until we can learn to be more accepting of our own flaws and each other's flaws simultaneously. What about meism? Essentially where people feel the need to comment or insert themselves on something that very obviously wasn't for them. A good example I saw was talking about what if hypothetically you were sharing a recipe for a really good pork and beans soup and someone commented, "What if I'm vegetarian? What if I don't like pork or beans?" Etc. etc. That and main character syndrome. Needing to have a main character moment. People need to learn when something is appropriate and when it's not. The idea that because it's in an article or publication that means it's fact. Some idea being in an article of the NET makes it no more legitimate than if your uncle says it to you over dinner. What matters is the facts behind it and if it's true. Critical thinking is knowing to question things and getting the info needed to know what's real and fake. Critical thinking is not knowing to ask for a citation and then believe it just because somebody else does. Propaganda exists. You read it every day. Recording strangers in public for social media content. Using the term trauma to describe any negative thing that happens to you. Sharing every aspect of your kids' lives on social media. Want to post a couple pics every now and then so family members you don't get to see very often can keep up with your family? Cool, showing a picture of your kid with his pants down on the toilet and bragging about how he's finally potty trained? TMI, and he's going to hate you for it when he's a teenager. I don't know if this has always been a problem, but there is so much violence and assault towards healthcare workers. I'm a nurse and was just assaulted last week. More than half of my coworkers have been physically assaulted by patients and it's seen as normal. We file charges and they go nowhere or police refuse to take our statements. If someone was assaulted in any other setting, that person would be arrested on the spot, but we're just told that it's part of the job and it's infuriating. Bringing multiple kids to a brewery. If you live in a state where they have to have a restaurant and it's kid-friendly, fine. I still don't like it, but okay. But if it's in a state where they are only allowed to serve beer made there with no restaurant attached and nothing for kids to do, I'm sorry but no. Please let us have this. Adults get so few places about kids in public anymore. And anyone who says I can just go to a bar can just go to a family-friendly restaurant. People offering their opinions or 2 cents on subjects they are not knowledgeable in. Social media has created this idea that everyone is entitled to an opinion on everything and should voice it to everyone. Before social media, people basically stuck to their lane and stayed out of conversations they weren't qualified to contribute to. Now we live in an era where a guy who barely passed 10th grade will explain to you why your doctor is wrong about vaccines. This stupid me thinking. If you don't want to believe in vaccines, it doesn't mean they aren't good. If you don't like blue hair, you have no right to demand someone else change their hair to your taste. If you don't like entire groups of people for absolutely no reason, don't get offended when you get called out for it. If you don't want to try to understand other people, don't say those that are trying are snowflakes. They're humans and you're an ass. Lying on social media. There are tons of influencers that lie about how to get rich, how to get fit, self-care, etc. Said influencers should be ashamed of themselves. For example, there was an influencer that stated when you're in your 20s, you need to buy 10 rental properties if you seriously want financial independence. That is probably the most brain-dead advice I've seen. About 0.02 of people in their 20s could actually achieve that. Your employer thinking you should be available 24/7, 365 for questions such as what's the password? How many accounts do we have? Or are you coming in during the holiday? That and obsessive phone use. I like to pretend it's the O's and go offline for days on end. Don't even pull out the phone, flat out lose it. People freak at this idea, and seem to take it as personal insult that I don't respond to them in 5 minutes, demanding everything be given to people for free just because they want it and therefore they deserve it. Doing drugs 24/7 and harassing and even getting violent against people who don't. Trying to force religion into every level of government to rule us, including into education. Cheating in a relationship. And finally, having to have 3 or 4 jobs and several passive income side hustles just to be able to pay rent. Stay at home if you are sick has gone out the window. I work in a nursing home. Putting the sick employees' miserable feelings aside, it is, at best, irresponsible to come to work and spread the virus to the elderly. We receive so much pushback for calling out that it is not uncommon for employees to be running back and forth between puking in the restroom to caring for patients. I will die on this hill. Children being disrespectful to their parents, other adults, and parents not only accepting the disrespectful behavior, but encouraging it by laughing and finding humor in it. Oh well, what are you going to do? My kid's just that way. As they roll their eyes and throw up their hands. And then they can't figure out why I don't encourage my kids to be around their kids, or invite them over. In my area at least, leaving dog shit everywhere. When I had family dogs as a teenager, I almost never saw dog poop left on the ground, and if I did it was under bushes or ivy where people wouldn't be stepping. Now I'm regularly having to clean off our stroller wheels after walks with my baby because nobody picks up after the animal they elected to care for. People are becoming way too comfortable with their privacy being violated. Every time there's a new privacy debacle they go, wow, that sounds scary, and then go back to sharing everything about their life on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, because at the end of the day the convenience of social media is way more important than any concern they might have. Getting COVID over and over again. It's still the 3rd leading cause of death behind all cancers combined and all kinds of heart disease. Studies suggest between 10 to half of people have symptoms that continue for months, and it seems to also make people's immune systems worse in general. We sort of just gave up on doing anything about it, though. The way children are viewed in Western society, their existence and the right to share space in this world is becoming less and less tolerable to far too many. I only came to this realization while traveling with a child in cultures where they're treated with far more respect. The contrast is staggering. X not being allowed at restaurants, throwing labels at people just because they don't like something. I commented on TikTok that I don't like Taylor Swift and someone accused me of hating her because she's a woman and called me misogynistic. I'm not misogynistic. I'm also, in fact, a woman. Can't I just be allowed to not like somebody without getting insulted? People unable to accept being wrong. If someone proves me wrong, I'm usually like, cool, I learned something and they helped me by not looking like an idiot spreading false information. Where anytime I see someone prove someone else wrong, that person responds to name calling or blocking, or just some erratic way. Pedophilia. There is a wave of acceptance to so-called non-offending pedophiles by labeling them MAPS, minor attracted people. I mean, this is grossly inappropriate and needs to be investigated. A pedophile is a pedophile. They pose the same risk to children whether they've offended before and got caught or not. Stupidity. Climate change deniers, anti-vaxxers, science skeptics, TikTok, idiotic celebrity worship, being uneducated, blind patriot and nationalism, guns, selfishness, thinking that having kids is something to be proud of, encouraged, insisting COVID is behind us, and just utter ignorance in general. Surveillance of your family. When I see clips of kids' bedrooms and they are bigger than toddlers, or videos of a living room, I just get the creeps. Kids will never understand privacy or boundaries, and are going to have toxic as fuck relationships and are not going to care about privacy from the NSA. Demanding that influencers and corporations speak on every current event and political issue. It feels dystopian to have a chip company or a Minecraft YouTuber or whatnot to be expected to educate the population on a tragedy or issue when they're not qualified to be giving that kind of information. Doing drugs, especially cocaine and speed. At least where I live it seems very common that people between 18 and 40 do it on a regular basis. Many people do it, people I never thought were doing it are doing it. Some on a daily basis even. I feel like the last person here who has never tried it. Definitely the complete lack of privacy where our phones are listening to our every word. Also, it's more niche and not everyone will be unfortunate enough to experience it, but the complete lack of basic civil rights in our family court and child welfare system? If you know you know. I'm sure this will get downvoted, but self-diagnosing. It's one thing if you say I think I have X before you get diagnosed. But if you insist upon claiming you have something without getting diagnosed, that's completely different. Yeah, I'm sure I'll get called an analyst or whatever, rolling eyes face. Public consumption of stinky ass weed. Playing music, playing games with sound effects, and watching videos, conducting a phone call on your cell phone while using your speaker when you're on a bus, train, subway, plane, in a restaurant, waiting room, restroom. Give me a fucking break. Owning pets. Not everyone can provide the life a pet needs for their instinctive needs, not our society's perception of things. And absolutely not owning exotic animals or birds. How anyone thinks it is okay to put a flying animal in a cage its entire life is straight mental. Posting a photo of someone that you consider in your opinion has done something wrong or illegal without proof. Similarly, posting photos of people suspected of a crime before being charged, effectively slandering that person all over the internet and creating trial by media. This may not fit the question, but it seems that storming stores en masse is a frequent occurrence. It was previously shocking and an unexpected occurrence. Every day I see multiple stories across the country of these smash and grab situations. Lawlessness seems the norm now. Internet slander. As in, when someone in real life doesn't like something you do, instead of handling it like an adult and just forgetting about it, they slander you online for the next week or something. It's dumb, and most people online don't actually know the full story. The lack of compassion for people. It's scary how much of an apathetic society we're becoming, to where people don't care about the plight of others. People just keep their eyes averted and say it's not their problem, if they can even acknowledge there is one to start with.